Before we get started, I want to introduce everyone to our translator for the district, which has a special announcement for folks that need translation for this evening.
Thank you, President López. Buenas tardes a todos. Habla Paula Balbuena. Si necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor llame el 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 503-260-559 más la tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente, llame al número de teléfono 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 503-260-559 más la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web mcs4kids.com dirigiéndose a la parte inferior de la pantalla en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Balbuena. And now I welcome everyone to the Modesto City Schools 1472nd regular board meeting of February 7th, 2022. This meeting is now called to order. There was no action taken by the board in closed session. And before we get started today, I would like everyone to please stand and for a moment of silence in honor of the tragic loss of 3 of our students at Davis High School and the loss of Captain Max Fortuna. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. This is the open session meeting of the Board of Trustees. Is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available at the district website, and the recording will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. Modesto City School Board meetings have been adjusted to follow health and safety precautions until further notice. Modesto City Schools has provided an opportunity for the public to provide comments. This is outlined on the agenda. The public has been given an opportunity to call or leave a voicemail, send us a comment via email, or appear in person. Any public comment received via email or voicemail prior to noon the day of the board meeting will not be read out loud, but has been transcribed and printed with copies provided to each board member prior to the start of the board meeting and are available to the public. The voice email public comments will be attached to further board meeting minutes for approval. This practice will continue until further notice. For the members of the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we really appreciate your comments. And if you wish to address the board during the period for public comment on a subject not on the agenda, you must complete a public presentation request card to submit to the board prior to the period for public comment. If you need assistance from our translator, please indicate so on the request card. Every person who wishes to address the board, please fill out a card. You'll find a card in the lobby, and you can hand them over to Antoinette, which is in the back. If you plan to speak on the topic, please fill out the card now, as no cards will be accepted after the public period has begun. And there's a max time of 3 minutes per each speaker for a total time of 30 minutes. And now we're pleased to welcome our students from Lakewood Elementary School, who will lead us in the flag salute tonight. Do we have Soleil Burns? Soleil Burns, sorry. Soleil is a 5th grader at Lakewood Elementary and is the student vice president. She's a member of Traffic Safety Patrol, Drama, Chorus, and Sign Language. Soleil is also on the soccer and competition dance team. She is kind, loving, cheerful, and in her free time, she enjoys spending time with her sisters. Following college, she would like to be a professional soccer player or a nurse. Wow. Do we have? Yes. And we also have tonight Ms. Hora Khan. Hora is a sixth grader who serves as the student council president. She's a member of the Traffic Safety Patrol, Robotics, and Junior Achievement. Hora is a GATE student and can read, write, and speak 4 different languages. She's currently learning a 5th language. She is kind, respectful, and a great role model to her peers. Following college, Hora would like to be an orthodontist. Awesome future for us. Would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you. We'll now be moving on to our Superintendent Naguchi's welcome and announcement.
We are going to do that after your picture. Yay!
Sorry about that. Now we'll be moving on to the Superintendent Naguchi welcome and announcements.
Wonderful, thank you, and welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out this evening, and welcome those that are tuning in via the website. I am very encouraged that we are seeing a drastic reduction of COVID in our schools, both with our students and with our staff, and so it is we are very optimistic as we move into the latter part of the winter and then obviously the spring, but we definitely see light at the end of the tunnel, and we're all very encouraged. A couple weeks ago it was really challenging, but everyone, as I said last time, everyone pitched in and we made it happen. You know, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about an event that I went to, and many of the board members went to, and you'll probably hear it from them as well, but a groundbreaking ceremony at Tuolumne Elementary last week. It really was inspiring to see the parents, to see the students, to see the teachers, to see the robotics, everyone coming out in just celebration of some new facility work that's going to be going on and building in the next couple years. We really wouldn't have this happen if it wasn't for our community and the passage of measures D and E, which we continue to talk about, but the sheer impact of that vote from 3 Novembers ago still lives on, and it was truly inspiring. At Tuolumne Elementary, they are going to be looking at our first STEAM Academy building built specifically for engineering and robotics. It's very exciting for that community, and that you could tell that the community was certainly encouraged by the work. In addition to changing the front office, looking at different parking, really remodeling that school to make it a better place for the students and the staff out there. You know, I speak about this groundbreaking, but this is the third groundbreaking I've gone to since September. So we've had a groundbreaking for Shackelford multipurpose room and cafeteria. We've also had it for Fairview, a cafeteria and multipurpose room. We've also had ribbon cuttings. We had ribbon cutting at Bret, Hart, and I see the principal here. Really excellent facilities for, again, more computer-based STEM-related activities and professional development for our teachers. And again, all of this wouldn't happen if it wasn't for you all. And one, the support of the board, so I want to continue to thank the board for their support, but also the community as a whole. In addition, and lastly, there isn't an elementary school in the elementary school district that hasn't benefited one way or the other, because we've touched all the schools. While some schools have major projects going on in renovation, other schools have paint and fencing, and actually Roger back there could give a whole long list of all the improvements. So all the schools have benefited in one way or the other. I look forward to the ribbon cutting of Wilson Cafeteria and multipurpose room coming up. Once I believe we get a refrigerator, I think we're backlogged months on a refrigerator, but it is right around the corner, and we'll be able to celebrate that as well. While this past week has been filled with a lot of hope and optimism, it has also been filled with some great despair. I do want to thank President Lopez for the dedication of our moment of silence to the loss of our 3 Davis High School students, and also the tragic loss of Captain Fortuna. I want to give my condolences to the families, to all that were affected, and also express my gratitude to the staff who reached out and is working to support all the families that are affected by all of this great tragedy. So thank you for that. So with that, I'm going to turn back over to President Lopez.
Thank you very much. Now, we'll be moving on to Board of Education member report. Is there any board member speaking to give a report? I see Vice President Brown, Maestas, Trustee Irwin, Trustee Markson, and Trustee Mejia. And Trustee West, which she will be joining us via Teams. Okay.
Why don't we hear from Trustee West first, since we didn't catch when she logged in.
Great. Can Trustee West?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Vice President Brown, for noticing. I know it's difficult sometimes when I'm not there in person to be able to see people. I know all of us are going to talk about the Tuolumne ribbon cutting. It was such an exciting morning, freezing cold that morning, but the excitement in the air was palpable. When we walked on campus, from the balloons to the energy from the students to the red carpet that we walked in, they had waters, they had cookies, the community, the staff members, the students, you could just feel the excitement of everyone for this new building and this new program at Tuolumne. And I'm so thankful for this campus, and I'm so impressed with the job that they do. And so it was a wonderful experience. I also wanted to say, I was picking up my grandkids from their school recently, and in the lobby of the school, while I was waiting for them, they had a lot of pamphlets displayed, and they had a beautiful parent ambassador introduction for their new parent ambassador. And I have to say, there was something in our board communication this week from Maybe Herrera, who does such a wonderful job getting those parent ambassadors into our schools. And so I'm excited to see the work that they're going to be doing in our campuses as well. And then one last shout out for National School Counseling Week. I'm so excited for my fellow school counselors and the jobs that they do, especially the last couple of years with our mental health needs. And I just want to say thank you all from the bottom of my heart for everything you do to help our students and our staff.
Thank you. Vice President Brown?
Yes, there were a few things that I was able to participate in this last time period. One was a meeting of the audit committee, and we'll be hearing that report tonight, but great things came out with the report, and I always love audits where there's no findings. So I hope I'm not stealing anybody's thunder, but boy, that really excites me to hear. The other meeting that I attended was the meeting of the Stanislaus County School Boards Association. Good things are happening. We have a dinner coming up in April, and we'll be hearing more information about that as we get closer. Another thing that will be happening is that they're exploring an opportunity for school board members of all districts within the county to have an open forum discussion in person a couple of times a year so that we as school board members can talk with each other about concerns that we have and things that are happening in individual districts that we all need to know about. So I'll keep you informed about those events as they happen. The speaker for our April meeting will be announced soon through the superintendent, as superintendents are helping to develop who that speaker will be and what the topics are. So it will be something that will be pertinent to all of us as board members, and a time for us to kind of share experiences with other board members throughout the county. So also, as I participated in that event at Tuolumne, I was kind of overcome with emotion that day as I realized what effect our bond measures are having on individual students. Every individual student in our district is being touched and benefited by the great things that are happening. And I just can't thank the public enough for their support and realizing how important education is, even for students in areas that might have been forgotten in the past. It is so exciting to see what was happening at Tuolumne, to feel the excitement there. For me, it was also emotional to hear our board president speak to the families in Spanish, in their native language. And to me, that was huge. As I was leaving, one of the teachers pulled me aside and thanked us for being there. And as she and I were speaking, we looked across the campus and we just dreamed a bit. We saw all of the portable classrooms disappear and being replaced with permanent structures at some point. We saw the homes surrounding the school, and we talked about what improved education does for the value of every home that feeds a school that provides such great educational opportunities for our students. And as we were leaving, I just commented that, no, this wasn't a groundbreaking, this was a ground-shaking experience for me, as I realized what the potential was for every one of those students involved at that school, and what we're doing as a board and as a district to make sure that we're reaching and maximizing the potential of every one of our students. So I thank everyone in the district for their part. I thank you for excuse me for all the extra effort right now to reach every student, regardless of their situation, in times that are unprecedented. And everyone needs to just feel the love and appreciation from our board for the work that you're doing to make sure that every student is reached and taught to their best ability to learn. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Maestas?
Thank you. So I've got a couple of reports of things that I was able to go to since the last time. We had our equity committee meeting for this January, which I was very excited to be part of. The meeting was had plenty of updates on our work in the district and moving forward in the recommendations from the equity task force. And there were updates. A lot of it was on the equitable grading, which was a lot of great information on where the district is moving in and the cohort that is participating in that. And then, like we'll see today, some information on staffing and how our efforts are going in that, in terms of equity in our staffing. So we'll see that in a presentation as well. So I thought that was a very good meeting. It was quick. There's a ton of information, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So I appreciated that. I had an opportunity, obviously one of my daughters was in it, but I had an opportunity to go to a theater production at Lakewood Elementary School. The PTA brought in Missoula Children's Theater Company, and they travel across the U.S. and Canada, and they do like a intense 1 week theater production. So the kids all met after school for 1 week, learned all their lines and everything, and then performed on Friday and Saturday. So it was wonderful to see that back. Looked like the kids had a great time. It was just awesome to be there and see the kids have enjoyment for theater. So, and then lastly, I just want to say over the last few weeks, through this Omicron surge, this surge of COVID, it took a really huge team effort by our substitutes, our admin that were in, principals that were third grade teachers, or coaches that were third grade teachers, which I did once over the last couple of weeks. District staff, all the people that are working so hard to keep our schools open for our kids over the last 3 weeks. People that were in classrooms that hadn't been in classrooms for a while. Everybody chipped in. And I just want to appreciate all of those people for doing everything they possibly can and working very, very hard to help us keep going. Because it's all about getting our kids to be in the best place possible, which is at school. So thank you very much for all those people that worked very, very hard over the last 3 weeks and as we continue moving forward over the next few weeks. That's it.
Thank you very much. Trustee Irvin?
Yes, I just like to comment on a couple things that went in. I too was at the Tuolumne earth-shaking event out there, and also really appreciated how they rolled out the red carpet. I felt that it was at the Tuolumne Oscars, and so Oscars go to all the staff and staff at Tuolumne, staff in the district who all made this happen, made this earth-shaking event happen for the future of our students. I remember when I was in charge of after-school programs, we used to do programs out of Kwanzaa huts over at Tuolumne and Mark Twain. So it was really good to really see how far we have come, and the future is really, really bright for our students and families in that community. And like I said, they roll out the red carpet. I actually got a chance to do a little funny dance with some of the students across the red carpet. But it was really good to see the participation of the community early in the morning there at Tuolumne. I also got a chance to attend Congressman Josh Harder's presentation of students who have been recommended for the military academies there. And we had 3 students, and there were students from Stanislaus County and San Joaquin County, the southern portion of San Joaquin County, which covers the congressional 10th district. And we had James Enoch students represented, Fred Beyer, C. Beyer High School represented, and also Grace M. Davis School represented. And 2 of them are going to the Naval Academy, chosen Naval Academy, Mr. Godot. And one is choosing the Air Force Academy. So West Point, at least for now, because they got accepted into various academies. The ones I talked to, there were 2 Navy and 1 Air Force. So job well done. And we had 3 students who are considering military futures and careers, to serve our country. So I'm a proud Navy man. So was really delighted to see our representation of students who have chosen, to attend the military academies. some of them had up to $500,000 in scholarships awarded to them. And so I know we're going to do something at the next board meeting, but man, it was just a really good sight to see that students are willing to serve in our nation's military, all volunteer service. So, again, that was my excursions for the month. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Marks?
Thank you very much. I just had a few committees I wanted to speak to. I attended the Ethnic Studies Committee, which is in preparation of the legislature. Anyway, when they tell us we have to have ethnic studies. So it's really cool to be part of the committee. There were 31 attendees that night. That was a full room on Zoom. And we broke up into small groups and shared in that way, which I thought was really helpful. I know the facilitator wasn't planning on it being on Zoom, and so I thought she adapted really well to that, because last time we met in this room, and it's really nice to see people face to face. So there's a lot of business leaders, community leaders, students on there, staff. It's just a great committee. So I'm really appreciative of being on that and just being able to work with our facilitator and just see where it ends up when we bring it to the board for a recommendation, because it's a recommending committee. And then I attended the budget committee meeting. That was great. It was really helpful with Mr. Zerley and the school services. Actually, I didn't get to stay long enough because I had another meeting at the same time. But it was really helpful to hear where we are with the budget, the state budget, how it's going to impact our schools, the money that's available for CTE. I was really excited to hear all the bond money. And then also, let's see, was there one other thing on here? Just that and career pathways, how we have a lot of opportunities to support our career pathways. And so I know that'll be really helpful. And I know we'll get a really detailed report tonight on the budget. And then I attended the CSBA Delegate Assembly meeting, where the delegates around are about 6 counties. We get together and talk once a month and just share some of the struggles and some of the highlights that we're having around our area. And we all are concerned about a couple of bills that are coming up into legislature. Anyway, those are from Senator Pan and Senator Scott Weiner. So we'll find out how that comes out when they come before us, but I hope that they'll make adaptations for school districts on those bills and at least listen to our concerns about the mandates that they're going to try to force on us again. Then the other thing is, lastly, I just want to say shout out again to the Tuolumne school. Groundbreaking was awesome. I had a chance to talk to a teacher that I've known for at least 20 years there. He and I got elected about the same time he became a teacher there. He's going to be moving into the junior high, and he's so excited about it, just that he's gotten to be there all this time, watch these students, and just talking to other staff members there, just the excitement about the arts program, and then also the song they did was really cool. He adapted a Howdy Doody song, because that's when the school was built, during Howdy Doody time. So he took the Howdy Doody theme of it's Howdy Doody time. He said it's groundbreaking time. So the students all came together and sang that. And he's always really good at writing little jingles at the school, and just makes it really a special event. So just having all the board members there was really awesome. And just seeing all the students come together, sing that song together, just being with us in that environment was really special. So I was appreciative of all of that has been said about it, and looked forward to their robotics. I mean, they had the little cars out there and everything. So I'm looking forward to our students being able to produce those little nifty cars in STEAM. So it was great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Trustee Mejia?
Hello. Yeah, I think some of our board members covered some of the stuff I was gonna go, but I'll just go real brief. I participated in the equity task force, so that was, like I said, very incredible. We'll get to hear more tonight. I was also part of the ethnic studies. I really like where we're headed and the amount of discussion going there. I also participated in the audit committee. That was pretty. That was pretty awesome to be part of the process of learning. Like I said, we're about a year in, so as newer board members, we're learning a lot and doing a lot. But I wanted to say something from that was resonating with all of our board members. I had my parents. My parents are getting a little older, and my dad went 3 days to school in another country, Mexico, and brought me to the United States with this type of dream, for me it was very special because it was they were able to be there and this groundbreaking, and so it just hit in so many different wavelengths that has come in just one generation. What has happened and what could happen for lots of our families in those communities, because we live there a few blocks from there, and so it was just so close to my heart on that. And I was also one of my careers. I was participating in a program. I worked with migrant students when I was in college, and I was able to work with 2 teachers that were at the groundbreaking and also the leaders in the robotics, and able to see them there and able for us to share those moments, and that was in their classrooms, and just seeing the passion that over 20 years, and their passion, their fire has not even, it's gotten bigger since I was in their classroom. So that was just fascinating. So it just hit me the core in so many different levels. It was a very special time just to see, and my roots. I was there in 2002 and 3 at Tuolumne, and so it was just fascinating, incredible. I just can't wait to see it and walk those rooms and go see those kids of what the amazing things and dreams are gonna come out of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I do have a report, but I want to just make it quick because I know we've all talked about pretty much the same things. I did want to say that I was able to assist the online open house for Modesto City Schools. I was able to talk to some of the teachers from the AVIT program. They gave me a quick presentation, and we just got into conversation around school transfers and the TAC programs for students that don't know what that is. Check in with your counselors. That's a great program, a great way to go to MJC and have a secure spot in a UC or a CSU. But yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity to be at Tuolumne. It's been a wonderful opportunity we've had groundbreakings at Shackelford, at Bret, Hart, ribbon cuttings, and Tuolumne, and just the opportunity, right? We talk about the buildings, and the building allow us now to have to add classes and add grades, which is something that the parents at Tuolumne wanted their kids to stay there longer, right? They wanted kids to really feel embraced by that community, and I think that not only for our education, but as a community, Tuolumne is becoming a hub, right? And that's what we want, that we blend the walls of our classrooms with the community, so that it's all working in connection for our students to succeed. And it was great to see Trustee Mejia's parents. I've known them for a very long time, so I felt like my parents were there as well. So it was a great moment to be a part of. And Vice President Brown, the work that you've done even before we came on board, and the work that everyone has done around the measures, this is just the beginning. So we're very appreciative of the work that you have allowed us to do as voters in the community, so that we can benefit our students in our community. So thank you. And now we'll be moving on to recognitions, and I'll pass it over to Ms. Noonan.
Yes, thank you, Board President Lopez. And before I start with recognitions, it really touched my heart listening to each of you with your reports. And I just really want to commend you, because being elected officials, it's clear that your passion for the district, so and for the students. So thank you for all that you shared. So good evening. I'm Krista Noonan. I'm the Chief Communications Officer, and it's always a pleasure to do our special recognitions for every board meeting. So thank you to all of you who have joined us. First up tonight, we're going to celebrate a student with outstanding character, and that's through our Character Education Recognition Program. So tonight we are celebrating Bret Hart Elementary School 5th grader Abigail Gonzalez for the character trait of responsibility. Nominated by classroom teacher Amanda Brown, Bret Hart principal Marla Conte is here tonight to read the nomination on her behalf. So Principal Conte, if you'd like to come up to the microphone, you're probably going to have to turn it on. And then Abigail, if you'd like to come up as well, feel free to join your principal.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to present this special award to Abigail Gonzalez. She's a 5th grade scholar at Bret Hart. Her teacher is also extremely responsible and is at class tonight, which is why I'm here to share with you why she represents this outstanding character trait with responsibility. I have the pleasure of visiting her in class every single week and seeing her in action, so I can vouch for the many beautiful things that her teacher said about her. So Abigail never shows up with a computer that has less than 100% charge. So I frequently forget to charge my phone. I forget to put gas in my car. Abigail is who we should all strive to be in terms of responsibility. When she is assigned a classroom job, she takes it very seriously. Not only that, she makes sure that other jobs in the classroom are taken care of with the utmost responsibility. When I walk into the classroom, she's always working, trying her best on assignments. She has not missed one homework assignment. So we are here to honor Abigail for her responsibility. Let's hear it for Ms. Gonzalez.
Great, thank you so much. Next up, we will celebrate our MCS hero, and tonight we are celebrating Bayer High School typist clerk Chuck De La Rosa. Bayer High School principal Dan Clark nominated Mr. De La Rosa, and Mr. Park is here tonight to read the nomination. So if you'd like to come up, and then Chuck, you're welcome to come up as well. And then we will do photos. I forgot to mention that for the previous one. I'm so sorry. So Vice President Brown, you'll be coming for this photo as well as Dr. Naguchi.
Chuck, come on up here where they can see you, sir. Earlier in the school year, I was in the student body office and saw a mother and her student in there purchasing PE clothes. That makes me know they're brand new to the school. I introduced myself and welcomed them to the school, and as soon as the mother realized who I was, the principal, she immediately went into a story about the experience she had just had in another office with Mr. De La Rosa. The mother's primary language was not English. She was not tech savvy, and she had come to the school with the most precious thing in her life in tow to enroll them at Bayer High School and to leave them in our care. And with all those disadvantages she walked into that room with, she was struggling in the enrollment process. Hence, Mr. De La Rosa stepped in, and the mother went on to tell me over and over how he walked her through the process, helped her with the language barrier, helped her with the technology barrier, got her enrolled. And at the end of that conversation with me, I just realized that what could have been a potentially unhappy situation for a mother wanting to leave her child in the custody of Bayer High School because of Mr. De La Rosa, she left there that day knowing that child was taken care of up to that point, and she had a smile on her face, and I believed every word she said about it. Mr. De La Rosa, on a daily basis, that's not an isolated incident, that's not a one-time occurrence, and he is providing customer service, but not in the sense that it's what's required or it's in the job description, but that's just just who Mr. De La Rosa is. He is a true hero at Beyer High School, and he does make an impact on students, his fellow staff members, parents, whomever he comes into contact with. He is such an outstanding representative of Modesto City Schools and Beyer High School. Mr. De La Rosa, it's a pleasure to work with you every day, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And lastly, for tonight's special recognition, I wanted to bring your attention to the consent agenda for this evening. Item F as in Frank, number 2, is a proclamation for February 2022 being National Black History Month. So I just wanted to bring that to the public's attention, as well as the board. You'll be voting on it as part of tonight's consent agenda. I won't read all of the proclamation, but I just want to share a little bit of history about Black History Month. It previously was called African American History Month, and that dates all the way back to the year 1915, which is quite a substantial history. In 1976, that's when Black History Month was formally adopted at the federal level and as well as at the state level. For this year's theme, so every year they always have a different theme to recognize, and this particular theme this year is Black Health and Wellness, and it's really honoring a lot of the professionals who are of African American descent who go into the medical profession, but also a lot of what they say are like the holistic doctors, especially in Africa and all the different work that they do. So it's a really rich month, and we're very happy to have the board be voting on that proclamation this evening. So thank you so much. That completes tonight's recognitions.
Thank you very much. And now we'll be moving on to 8, approval of consent agenda. I know there's a couple of comments in regards to consent. Trustee Marks?
Okay. Yes, I just, I asked if we could have one date changed on for the next 2 years for a board meeting, and so it's in front of you. It's the November 28th board meeting was changed to November 21st. It's so that it's the next week is CSBA Delegate Assembly Week and the conference week, and there's a lot of responsibilities, and I wanted to be able to still attend it. And so for both years, it's just moved up 1 week from that. So it's so that you can see that on your calendar. So that's all I wanted to make you aware of. And if it's amiable for the board to change that one date, then that would be great for the 2 years.
Trustee.
Yes, with regard to the consent agenda, I just wanted to make mention to the public that even though items are in consent, that does not in any way diminish their importance. If we were to have every item that's in our consent presented in our board meetings, we would be here till 2 o'clock in the morning. But there's a couple of things that I want to make sure the public is aware of that we're bringing forward in consent today, and just let you know how excited I am to see them moving forward. We've talked a lot already tonight about the bond measures, and I want to make sure that the public is aware that in our consent agenda tonight, we have item C8, which is the approval of resolution supporting the award of lease back agreements to J.L. Bret and Sons, a local company, for the El Vista Elementary cafeteria and site improvement project. And also, item C9, approval of another resolution of awarding a lease back agreement to Acme Construction, another local company, for the John Fremont Elementary School Cafeteria and Site Improvement Project. So once again, bond money being spent in our community and working with local contractors who will bring that bond money back around many times over as their employees, who are local people, are performing this work for us. So this is just super exciting, and I didn't want that to go unmentioned. So folks, if you're looking at our agendas, don't just look at what we have that we're going to be discussing. Look at what we've done as a district and place on the consent agenda, because it's every bit as important as the things that we're able to discuss here. Thank you.
Trustee Irvin?
Yes, as we recognize in the consent agenda, and we just heard about the National Black History Month proclamation. I just wanted to recognize Miss Odessa Johnson, who was the first black teacher in Modesto City Schools in 1962, and also a former school board member here as well. And so I just wanted to point that out I mentioned during National Black History Month here in our proclamation. She was the first black teacher in Modesto City Schools. She's still here in our community.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak on any items in consent agenda? Hearing none, to the board, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
With the
With the modification, sorry. Our student rep, Banaka, motions, do I hear a second? Seconded by trustee Irvin. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Should I? Okay, great. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Now we're moving on to our approval of order of discussion and action items. Do I hear a motion to approve the order of discussion? So moved by trustee Mejia, seconded by trustee Marks. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion is approved unanimously. And now this takes us to the period for public presentation. Ms. Chambers, do we have any additional cards? If not, we have one for tonight, and I'll ask Ms. Adele Quinsonberry to come to the podium. You have a total of 3 minutes, and she'll be speaking on mask mandates.
Thank you for having me. I'm sure it's a topic you're probably used to listening to and hearing about. They can hear me. There we go. Okay. We live in America and are free to live our lives without restrictions, abuse, and unlawful mandates from elected government officials. Mandates are not enforceable laws, and as elected public servants, you have no jurisdiction or authority to create enforced mandates. Our children have rights to live without requirements or mandates that restrict their ability to breathe freely. Forcing mandates on children has caused behavioral problems, learning disabilities, and damaged social skills. The superintendent and this school board was appointed to serve the people in a lawful manner outlined in the Constitution of the State of California, and more importantly, the Constitution of the United States of America. Of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, illegally creating and or enforcing policies on minors in order to attend school, violates our civil rights to attend schools as citizens of the United States of America. Restricting children's freedoms and forcing them to wear a mask that is dangerous and has no concrete scientific backing is in a direct violation of their civil rights. Child and Endangerment Act, as an act or neglect to perform an act that causes a child to suffer physical, emotional, or psychological abuse. And I have 3 examples that happened in my grandchildren's school. 1, last year when they required masks for outside, my grandson is a basketball player, plays hard, was ready to go in from recess, pulled the mask down so he could breathe because he had played hard. Yard duty came up, demanded him to put his mask on and stand in that square for 5 minutes. That seems like an unlawful restraint. Then the other brother, a few weeks later, he was told he pulled his mask down to breathe in the classroom. She told him, put your mask up, you're a danger to others. That seems like, forcible, or it's just unacceptable. Then just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, one of the other grandsons had taken his mask down to have a drink of water and putting the cap on, and before he could get done, the teacher said, you're putting others at risk that's around you, so put your mask up or leave my classroom. That sounds like fear-mongering. I made sure my grandchildren knew that it's shocking, that they act like they've got some sort of disease or something. So I think that's a problem. Intentional disregard to the dangers of face coverings. If there's nobody else, can I finish?
You can finish your last sentence.
Well, let's see here. I will say that I'm asking you to do what's best for the kids. We're in the bottom 5 states in math and science, and I have read that we're the 49th in the nation in reading. So where is your focus? Is it the buying of the 30 electrical buses? So I ask you again, how do these buses and mask mandates help improve the scholastic performance of our children? It's time to stop the insanity of masking our kids. It's demoralizing and dehumanizing, because we know that the survival rate of the coronavirus for kids is 99.8%. Their education is being stolen along with their sanity and their social skills. As a voice for all parents in this district, you, the board, are to be the solution and not the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that will conclude our public presentation. And again, although we cannot engage in discussion or take formal actions on items that are not on the agenda, we thank you for following our protocols and addressing the board, and for taking your time to share your views with us, and for caring about our schools. Thank you. And now we'll be moving on to B1, Student Representative to the Board Report, Ms. Mananca.
Thank you, President Lopez. At our last inter-high meeting, we worked on planning and coordinating the Tournament of Talent. We had an update from Mr. Brandon Fromm, who is currently coordinating the tournament, and we also did a check-in with schools to make sure that we're all ready and prepared for the tournament, which will be held on May 4th, which is coming up pretty soon. And we also had a discussion about how we can build energy for the Tournament of Talent and promote it. And what's special about this tournament in particular is that it's actually going to be held in person. I think the last 2 years have been virtual, so that's really exciting. We also worked on our service project. We had a really special presentation from the executive director of Chemo Crew, Brittany Thayer, who talked about what Chemo Crew does in the community and just what students will be contributing to through the service project. And I think it really just helps ground students in the sense that their impact is much more tangible, and it's really easy to actually understand what they're contributing, what they're working so hard for. And so that was really helpful. And so schools are currently continuing to work on their efforts in the service project. In terms of some other liaison activities that I've been doing, A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of attending the Ethnic Studies Task Force meeting, and I just really want to commend the civility and the great discourse that I saw at that meeting. I really felt like all input from all educational partners was truly considered, and I felt like there was such a great effort to really find common ground and find solutions that everyone could agree on. So I really want to commend that. And then I also attended a National Student Board Member Association meeting, and so I got to meet student board members from across the nation, and it was just really interesting to see how the position differs and how other students view the position and what they do, and I felt like I got to learn a lot from them as well. But other than that, that will conclude my board report.
Thank you very much. And now we'll be moving on to our California Schools Employees Association report. I do not see our the president for CSEA, and so I will be moving on to B3, report on Equity Task Force recommendations. Mr. Henderson.
Good evening, Board President Lopez and trustees, Dr. Naguchi and fellow cabinet members. And I think we'll be getting a PowerPoint to come up, or is it up? And I'm not seeing it.
It's up behind you.
All right. Maybe better if I went up top. Do this. Okay, that we can reference and make sure I'm on the right slide. Good evening. It's my pleasure this evening to provide information regarding two of the recommendations of the Equity Task Force, specifically on the topic of increasing teacher diversity and analyzing teacher placement. The purpose of the presentation is to provide some baseline data on the diversity of the district's workforce, and more specifically as it relates to teachers or certificated staff, as well as review some conclusions of an analysis of data on teacher placement. I'll outline some of the work related to the two recommendations and identify our next steps going forward. I need to inform the board as well as the public that we did make revisions to the PowerPoint that was posted and made public on Friday. It has been updated to reflect the correct category labels on the charts, to include both ethnicity and race. So my apologies to anyone at home who needs to get an updated presentation. We were able to provide that change and the copies that are here in the boardroom prior to the meeting. The focus this evening is on two of the 6 recommendations. The other recommendations which are listed have either been brought forward to the board in the past or will be at future board meetings. For perspective, I thought it helpful just to first look at the demographic makeup of our student body. Guiding question among the task force as it relates to diversity is, to what extent does the demographic composition of our staff approximate or mirror that of the students we serve? Recent data from the Student Data Dashboard shows that Hispanic or Latinos are our largest demographic group of students at 65.8%, followed by white at 18%, 2 or more races, 5.2%, Asian at 4%, 2.5% of our student body is Black or African American, and collectively other demographic categories and collectively at 4.4%. Although the task force is focused on the certificated teacher diversity, I wanted to first provide the wider context of the demographics of our total employee population, followed by breaking it down by respective employee groups, then focusing more closely on our teachers and certificated staff. Each of the next several slides shows our demographic makeup over a 3-year period from 2019 to 2021. This slide is all employees in the district, and looking at them all, approximately 37% of our employees are Hispanic or Latino, 54% white, 2.8% are Black or African American, and nearly 7% are other demographic groups collectively. Over the 3-year period, the Hispanic or Latino group has grown by just over 3%. White has decreased by by that same percentage. Black or African American has increased by 0.3, and the other category of demographics has decreased by 0.3. Looking at our managers, Our management group is just over 62% white, down 4.6% from 2019, 27.6% Hispanic or Latino, 4.9% Black or African American, and 5.3% other demographics, which is up slightly from 2019. Hispanic and Latino make up the majority of our classified employees at nearly 50%, followed by white at 40%, Black or African American at 3.3%, and 7.4% for other demographics. You can see the percentage changes over the time period with the highest increase in Hispanic or Latino group. So to the focus of the task force, our teachers, certificated staff, they're the particular focus of the recommendations. As seen in the slide, 23% of certificated staff are Hispanic or Latino. This is up 3.2% from 2019. 69% are white, which has decreased by 3% over the 3 years. 2% are Black or African American, maintaining the same percentage over that time period, and 6.1% for other demographic categories, also at relatively the same rate over the last 3 years. If we look at the data specific to certificated and new hires only over the last 3 years, it helps put into perspective the hiring trends as it relates to the demographics of our new employees in the certificated bargaining unit or certificated employee group. Of the certificated staff hired in those years listed, the percentage who are Hispanic or Latino increased by nearly 10%. White decreased by that same percentage, 10%, roughly, rounded. 5% of our new hires were Black or African American, which has increased 2.2%, and other demographics decreasing by 1.7%. As shown in the slide, the hiring of certificated staff reflects the trend of increasing diversity over the 3-year period listed. I want to go back a little bit further just for a longer comparison. Further back in time, comparing 2016 with 2021 with respect to employees representing diversity. The first grouping is looking just at new hires, but broken out by our different employee groups. And hiring representing diversity increased 11.4% for certificated staff and 43.2% for management. There were some fluctuations from year to year, but the general trend line is toward increasing diversity of different demographic groups. The second grouping represents the composition of all employees, including new hires, by employee group, representing diverse demographic groups, again comparing 2016 to 2021. The classified group increased 6.9%, certificated by 3.8%, and management by 7.8%. Drawing some conclusions from this portion of the data, some key findings are that the trend line over the last 3 years and longer, if you look going back to further dates, the MCS workforce does reflect increasing diversity across all employee groups. The strongest trends can be seen reflected in new hire district leadership and site leadership or managers, also teaching certificated staff. It's important to note that the progress reflected in the data capture a time period that includes the COVID pandemic and resulting workforce shortage, as well as the teacher shortage, which is an issue that predates the pandemic. With respect to the teacher shortage, we have seen a general decline in the number of candidates for teaching positions over time, particularly affecting special education, math, and science areas. We acknowledge there's more work to do if the goal is for the district's workforce to directly correlate with or mirror the demographics of the student body. This is particularly true with the certificated employee group, though the data show clear progress in this direction. There are a number of efforts that represent different steps that we've taken or changes in our approach toward district marketing, hiring practices, and working conditions. Our adoption of the destination district theme has been a major branding effort in MCS, and the district's made significant commitment and investment in its equity focus, from hiring an equity and intervention coordinator, an investment in engaging the work of the equity task force, to its investment in equity-based professional development through Epic Education. These efforts send a message to others about the culture the district strives to create for current and prospective employees. We've expanded our platforms and reach with respect to advertising positions, increasing how we leverage social media and online job posting platforms to reach a wider audience about opportunities in MCS. LinkedIn, for example, has been a powerful tool in expanding our reach beyond the traditional platform that we've used for educational postings, which is EdJoin. We've expanded our presence in job and career fairs by partnering with local partners such as NAACP, participating in virtual job fairs, which, as you can imagine, during the pandemic has been increasingly the way that job fairs have been operating, and attending fairs outside the local 209 region. Last, we've made significant commitment to addressing compensation and working conditions to create a culture of valuing employees, and you've been a direct part of that. The creation of the CIPD division, for example, a couple years ago as part of the district reorganization is one example. Investment in the district's contribution to health benefits to make medical plans more affordable. You've been directly involved in that. And completing compensation studies and making changes as those studies warrant has made MCS more competitive in the job market. We've built strong relationships with our labor partners, whether that's collectively to solve problems and have a good working relationship, or during negotiations to negotiate in a collaborative manner. And all of that improves the working conditions and contributes to the positive culture reflective in the destination district that we strive to achieve. Our next steps in the work for this recommendation include working between HR and IT in the development of data systems to make it more accessible and have the ability to access this data more frequently and monitor it to inform decisions. Implementing recently negotiated changes in our staffing and hiring timelines and process, including leveraging hiring incentives. Continuing work that's been underway in evaluating our hiring and selection processes to ensure fair, objective, and equitable hiring experiences. And continuing to expand partnerships and our reach outside our local areas. One example is strengthening our partnership with Stanislaus State through advisory participation, a diversity-based grant, which they were recently awarded and we will be part of, student teaching placements, and building pipelines with MJC for pathways into classified and certificated classroom positions and careers. Pause a moment to switch to the second recommendation for the task force, which is analyzing teacher placement. A little different focus, but the second recommendation addresses looking at teacher placement relative to student needs. The Federal Program Monitoring, or FPM, is a process or existing structure that requires us to look at the minority and low enrollment at our school sites and compare that information with the placement of three categories of teachers. Those meeting the federal definition of inexperienced, not yet credentialed, and out of field. A couple notes to consider. It's important to take into account the impact of the teacher shortage and COVID in looking at these analyses. For example, a direct result of the teacher shortage has been an increased reliance on hiring of teachers who are working toward receiving but have not yet received their full credentials and are in the classroom working under various types of permits. It's just a contextual piece I think is important to take into consideration. So we'll go through each. The first category, out of field, refers to teachers authorized by permit to teach in an assignment in which they're not fully credentialed. These teachers have a teaching credential, but they are not fully credentialed in a portion or their particular assignment in which they are teaching and have what's called a limited assignment permit or other waiver in place. To give you an example, we have an elementary teacher with a multiple subject credential, but they are teaching computer literacy, which requires an additional authorization. We have a teacher with a science credential who's teaching 2 sections of exploring technology elective. It's a different focus of the authorization. The conclusion from this data is that we have low numbers of out-of-field teachers and fairly even distribution across the schools with no particular concentration at sites with a high percentage of high minority or low income students. The next category is those not fully credentialed. The second category refers to teachers who are authorized by an emergency permit while they're working toward getting their credentials. These include interns, short-term staff permits, and provisional intern permits. This is a group that I referred to earlier that's been in higher demand because of the teacher shortage, and is particularly acute for hard-to-fill assignments such as math, science, and special education. We have 39 total teachers in this category. And to give you an example of what I mentioned about the particular acute shortage, 19 of those are in the area of special education. So it tells you, and it's not just us, a lot of districts have had to seek out prospective candidates, employees who are still in their programs working toward their full credentialing. We have a total of 19 teachers in this category at the elementary and junior high TK8 level. That's 2.6% of total teachers in that level. And 20 teachers at the high school level, representing 3.1% of total 912 teachers. Analysis of this data showed that one elementary site, Orville Wright Elementary, of which 91.4% of the student body is low income and 90.6% minority, has 2 teachers, which is 10% of its teaching staff, who are in this category of not fully credentialed. There are 2 of them, and they are on short-term staff permits as they progress toward getting their credentials. Other than this site, we found no significant concentration of teachers in this category at our high-needs sites. Next, we have the last category of inexperienced teachers. The federal definition of inexperienced teachers is a teacher with 2 or fewer years of experience, of teaching experience. We have 64 teachers in this category at the TK to 8 level, representing over almost 9% of total teachers in TK to 8, and 53 teachers in this category at the 912 level, representing 8.3% of total 912 teachers. Analysis of this data showed that there is a higher concentration of inexperienced teachers at 6 of our TK to 8 schools and 2 of our 912 sites. The guide we used to determine if whether there was a high concentration of inexperienced teachers at a given site is any site at which the percentage of minority and or low-income students was 80% or greater, and the percentage of inexperienced teachers was 10% or greater. So at the TK to 8 level, the data is reflected in the chart. You see Orville Wright has 4 teachers who are considered inexperienced, and that represents 20% of their staff, teaching staff. Kirshen, 5 teachers, and so on down the line. Bret, Hart, 8 teachers, 20% of their staff is considered by definition inexperienced. And looking at the 9 through 12 level, 2 sites, you had Johansson High School, 11 teachers, and Davis High School, 9. Now these are teachers who could have been hired or were hired either in the 2020 to 21 school year, so this is their second year, or 21-22, this being their first year. I want to note that it's important not to equate inexperience or not yet credentialed with ineffective or bad teaching. Many of the teachers we're talking about bring to the profession a positive energy, an eagerness to learn, relatability, and an openness to ideas. An inexperienced teacher left to his or her own devices may struggle, but when provided a network of support, professional development, and training, they can be well supported and effective in their assignments. Although they may be inexperienced today or working toward the final steps to attain their credential now, many will progress to be among our best teachers in the future. For example, I did call one principal who has 2 teachers that were up on the slide and said, how are they doing? They have short-term staff permits. He said, they're doing great. They have good energy, they're open to feedback, they ask for input, they're good with the kids, and I said, if you had to support them, a little bit of support, but when they're receptive and open to it, it's been fine, they're good. He said, I'm happy to have them. He said, there's not something happening with them, right? I said, no, everything's fine. So our next steps with this work include continuing the development of our data systems to regularly review and analyze this information, ensuring that we're coordinated between HR, Ed Services, and the CIPD division to support our new teachers, implementing negotiated changes to our staffing process and timelines, and leveraging hiring and transfer incentives to effectuate more even distribution of teachers in these categories across school sites when that is possible, and we can alter those conditions to bring about that ultimate end goal. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson. I'll go out to the public. Is there any comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions or comments for Mr. Henderson? I have Trustee Maestas. Anyone else? And Trustee Brown. Trustee Maestas?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for the in-depth report. I have a couple of questions, or probably data that you can get in a report or at some other time. I'd like to know what the California comparison is. I know that we are, like everywhere, struggling to get teachers, but I'd be interested in knowing what the ethnicity and race breakdown is of the teaching community across the state of California, and to see how that is helping or making it more difficult in our staffing to when we hire new people, if that makes sense.
Just to clarify, you're looking at the demographic breakdown of the teacher workforce in California?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then my other question is if there could be a breakdown of the type of course in the secondary area that teachers are teaching, and the ethnicity and race breakdown in that. Are they teaching AP, honors, IB program, remedial courses, first-year courses? Where are inexperienced teachers teaching all Algebra 1? Like, what is that breakdown? Just because, in my when I was growing up, I'm sure if you've seen Stand and Deliver, Jaime Escalante, that's like, I had people that I could look up to that were really like me, and so I was able to see myself there, and so having role models teaching those courses too is helpful.
You bet. From the Equity Task Force, I did focus in on math, and I've been compiling some of that information as that question was asked in the task force, but you're looking a little more globally outside of math as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just the inexperienced category, or also including those who are not yet credentialed?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Trustee Brown?
Yes, I appreciate the detail that we've seen in this report, especially the drilling down of the progress by categories. Helps us to see what we're accomplishing, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate also the statement that you made about inexperience not equating to effectiveness or ineffectiveness. And it's important for us to realize that in times like we're in right now, we rely very heavily on these new teachers because we have a great percentage of our experienced teachers retiring. And where else are we going to fill the classroom except with new inexperienced teachers? So the focus needs to be very strong on, and I feel that it is, on making sure that we do reinforce and encourage effective teaching, regardless of the amount of experience. So I appreciate your focus there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Irvin?
Yes, likewise, I appreciate the data and the time that's going in to extrapolate the data that we have here. I just wanted to make a suggestion that maybe, because we talked about, doing interviews from an equity lens of current minority staff within the district, then doing exit interviews with the same, targeting the same group. If also possible, we can include the data of the percentage of those who exit our district as well, in terms of comparing that data from equity lens, from the diversity. What percentage are leaving? That way we can use that as a variable too with the data to see if we can deduce and make some correlation between the numbers and the data that we see. That's all. Thank you.
Appreciate that. So focus group conversations about the hiring experience, the retention information, if we have any exiting, and also the employment experience. I think that would be really beneficial. Also, kind of along the pipeline sort of idea, one of the goals is to establish future teacher clubs at our campuses, and I think through that mechanism to be able to recruit students in to have an interest in teaching, because grow your own is one of the answers. The multi-pronged approach to expanding the teacher workforce and field is we have access to 28,000 students and 15,000 at the secondary. So if we could tap into that and get some of their interest into teaching.
Could that become a CTE pathways eventually?
Certainly talk to Ms. Senior Director Barkis, yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Irvin. I think Trustee Maestas mentioned about looking at data around what's our workforce look in the state. But one of the things I wanted to see is if we can get some data around who's applying for these positions, right? And what's the data and what's the breakdown around that? What's our workforce here in Stanislaus County, especially thinking into future teachers clubs, how we can really show how the improvement has been of who's applying to our positions after the clubs are initiated, and hopefully into the CTE work.
Appreciate that. We can do that. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there any other member that have any comments? If not, we'll be moving on, as this was just a report.
If I might,
Yes.
Trustee Lopez, here tonight we have Senior Directors Sarah Gill and Michelle Gutierrez, and this work, the work of the department, the hiring, COVID, everything, all of the above, I would be remiss if I didn't point out and appreciate their presence here and the work they do on a daily basis, including this past Saturday, coming in to participate in a teacher job fair virtually for Stanislaus State. So they put in all the hours and more, and are always looking to improve all of our efforts and the effectiveness of our systems, including ways that we can reach out and represent at these different job fairs. So thank you.
Thank you very much for everyone on the report and on your work on this matter. We'll be moving on to B4, approval of the first reading of proposed draft of Board Policy BP 6112, School Day, and review of proposed draft Administration Regulation AR 6112, School Day. And this is Mr. Godot.
Yes, thank you, Board President Lopez, trustees, Superintendent Dr. Naguchi, Cabinet, and for those of you watching from home, this evening I am presenting to you the first reading of the proposed Board Policy BP 6112 School Day, as well as the administrative regulation. Through the course of the last several years, we've been reviewing and analyzing our board policies and administrative regulations to update and bring up to speed various board policies and administrative regulations. This is actually a board policy that we do not currently have in our repertoire of board policies and administrative regulations, and it is something that we do believe is needed and should be within the scope of our board policies on several reasons. One, we do have a lot of work occurring around AB 328, which is start time adjustments to our 9-12 schools and the impact that that will have, as well as the analysis of our bell schedules and instructional minutes on a regular basis to have something codified in BP and AR language that will help guide us now as well as in the future to ensure that we have a go-to document that we can review to ensure that we're meeting the board's desires around school day as well as ed code. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on this board policy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Godot. We're going to go out to the public, and I still see that there's no public out there, so we'll bring it back to the board. Is there any questions or comments from the board? Trustee West? No. If not, do I hear a motion?
No. Sorry, I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thanks. If not, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of proposed draft of Board Policy BP 61 School Day and review of proposed draft AR 6112 School Day? I have a motion from Trustee Marks and Trustee Mejia had beat you to the. I have a motion for Trustee Marks and a second by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And now I'm going to request we take a 5-minute break. Great. We'll be back at, actually, let's go with 6, so we're back right at 7:30. Thanks.
Yeah, it is. I don't think it'll be that long like last time. If it is, I'm gonna have to have a conference.
Lakewood Elementary.
Thank you very much. We'll be coming back into session. And we will be moving on to B5, approval of the first reading of proposed revision to Administrative Regulation AR 6145.1, Inter-High Student Council. And the presentation will be done by our student rep, Ms. Mananca.
Thank you, President Lopez. I'm really excited about this policy because it's something that I recognize was necessary ever since the beginning of my high school experience. When I first learned about the Inter-High Council, when I wanted to join, though, I learned that you could only be on the council if you were in an elected ASB position, which I was not, and I have not been throughout my high school experience. Even though I was able to squeeze my way in without really being noticed or called out, I realized that this was a huge barrier to inclusive representation on the Inter-High Council. And I think that the real problem arises because of the fact that this council is currently being used as a representation of student voice for our student representative. However, when you have a council consisting of quite literally the most outgoing and high-achieving students from each high school, that simply isn't going to properly represent the entire student body. So in terms of the changes that we're proposing in this administrative regulation, there are really two parts. So the first part would be to add to the membership of Inter-High 2 students from the general student body of each high school. And then the second part is that it basically states that if more than 2 students apply, then the 2 students that will serve on the council will be randomly selected. And so I guess I'll just kind of break this down into those 2 parts. So in terms of the first part, with this 2 students being added to the council, you might be wondering why 2, why not more? And to be honest, I think I would have preferred that we include more students. However, students' main concern that we discussed was that if the council grew too large, it would be really difficult to manage the council, to maintain order, and to host in-person meetings. So currently, with 2 added students, which is being proposed today, the council's maximum membership would extend to 49 students, which is a pretty big council already. With 4 added students, it would extend to 63. And so, with this being said, I think it's really important to remember that this number is a result of months of discussion and compromise between the students of Inter-High, and this current proposal received a unanimous vote of approval from the students of Inter-High Council. So this is truly the common ground that we could all agree on. And my take on this is that this is a really great step in the right direction. And I think it's important to take the step to get the ball rolling. However, that's not to say that we can't reevaluate this policy in a year or 2 and add more students from the general student body if we feel that's appropriate and that the council can handle that. And then in terms of the second part, which is the random selection of students, we felt that having a random selection of students would be the most fair and representative way to get a sample of students from the student body, because we wanted to make sure that there was no bias towards certain types of students, especially high-achieving students, because we know we already have plenty of those on the council, and we want to hear voices from all types of students. You know, if we're trying to evaluate policies that really affect the struggling students in our district, how can we really evaluate that when all of our student voice is coming from students that are, you know, passing their classes with flying colors? And so we feel that this random selection would really take a fair and accurate sampling of students from each high school. So with all that being said, I'll now open the floor to any questions that you all may have.
So I see Trustee Maestas, but we'll go out to the public. Is there any questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll come back to the board. I have a couple of lights on. I saw Maestas, Irvin, and Brown. So I'll start with Trustee Maestas.
All right. Thank you. Awesome. Great idea. Always need more representation, more voice from students, because, you know, those students are the reason we're here, and we need to hear from them and get a good representation. The 2F, the randomly selected piece, the way it reads here is that 2 students from the general student body, but it says if more than 2 students apply for the position from the school site, then a random selection will determine which 2 students will serve on the council. So as I read that, the 2 students from the general student body can be any 2 students if they're applying for the position, and then if there are more than 2 students that apply, you then go to a random selection of those people that apply. So it's still an application-based process from the student body, right?
Correct. We wanted to create this process just so that we could mitigate, we wanted students to apply so that we could get a tally of how many students want to be on the council. And it's really not going to be, we don't foresee it being like some kind of comprehensive application. We just foresee it being students saying, I want to join this council. And So yeah, the random selection would happen only if more than 2 students apply. I would foresee that out of the sometimes thousands of students at a high school, I would hope that more than 2 students apply, and then it would go to a random selection.
Right, okay. Thanks.
Trustee Irvin?
Yes, again, I concur with my fellow trustee, Maestas, and appreciation of the work that went into bringing this forth and recognizing that the Inter-High Council should include a broader representation of students. My question is, and I know it says and I like the fact that the Alternative Education Center, but I wanted to know with that, does that include the adult education program? I don't know if a 40-year-old going back to school to get a GED or something, being on the inner council. So I just know if that they include Elliott or the adult education program, and just trying to make, see where we are with that in terms.
It's my understanding that it doesn't include the adults, and that part was already existing, and so we're not proposing a change to that. I have never seen an adult in our high council meetings, so I hope that answers your question.
Right. Well, I just saying it's a possibility, though, when you see the education. Yeah.
Trustee Irvin, I would also include that it does include Elliott.
Yes,
as
that's what I
representative.
mean. Elliott, that's okay. And then just a little typo on 1, 2, and 4 there. Point that out. And the activities involving space between yeah. But again, great job.
Trustee Brown? Vice President Brown, sorry.
Yes, I made mention to our student board member that I think her participation in our meeting tonight is actually showing an example to the rest of the student representatives statewide. And I thank her for her courage in doing so. We saw at the school board conference in December a presentation by some of the most active current and past student representative leadership in the state. And they talked to us about the need for student voice to be heard. And I just commend our students in the district for wanting to be a part of what we're doing, and want to commend our student representative for taking the lead. Thank you.
Definitely. Trustee Marks?
Yes, great presentation. Good job adding some new verbiage to it to add some more students to participate. I wanted to ask you how many students normally attend your meeting, the Inter-High Council meetings?
Currently about 15 to 20 students attend. I will say that I think these numbers are a little bit lower because we've had to have some meetings online. I remember when I attended a few years back in person, it was quite a bit more students. It was like a full library full of students. So yeah, around there.
That's great, because I remember when hardly any students came. So yeah, that's awesome. I think just it shows what kind of a leader you are and how you can elicit help and support in that. So that's awesome. All right, thank you.
So, thank you. I had a quick question if no one else had. So would that bring Elliot's numbers to 4? If I'm reading that correctly? To 4 members?
I think, it depends. Is Elliott considered a comprehensive high school? Because we're only adding these to the comprehensive high schools. So I believe that I don't believe that this change would affect Elliott. Would it? No.
Well, the way that this reads on your number 3, it says 2 elected representatives from the Alternative Education Center, which is Elliott. So this now would include 2 students from Elliott onto the Inter-High Council.
If I'm reading this correctly, it has already had 2 representatives from Elliott and
So number 3 isn't an add-on. So number 3 is existing AR. So that's already that's already embedded in it. It's just it sounds like Elliott's not participating at this point. So hopefully in the future they can abide by the number 3 on the AR 6145.
Okay. Great. Is there any other questions? Comments? No? Hearing none, can I get a motion to the first reading of proposed revision?
So move. Second. Second.
Okay, let me finish it. The AR 6145.1 Inter-High Student Council. So we have a motion by Student Rep Bananca. Do I have a second? Seconded by Trustee Irvin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. And now we'll be moving on to B6, report on annual update for local control and accountability plan. Lcap, Mr. Hurst.
All right. Good evening, Board President West, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Naguchi, and Cabinet, and anybody watching at home. Again, my name is Steve Hurst, and I'm the Director of State and Federal Programs. Today, we are going to be presenting on the annual update to the Local Control and Accountability Plan, otherwise known as Lcap, and then go through the next steps also involved. This should be rather quick because really most of this is contained within the documents that have been presented.
And that's Board President Lopez.
Oh, my fault. I should have changed in that. My apologies, Board President Lopez. You change your notes, you don't always do it. As far as district goal alignment, the LCAP is aligned with every one of our LCAP goals and strategic goals, so they are totally in alignment. So obviously, all goals apply in the instance of this update. So the mid-year update has been At the November 21st meeting of the State Board of Education, they were required to pass a motion to have districts present a mid-year update to their local board. This is a new requirement. Addition to the requirement there's what's called the supplement to the annual update to the 21-22 Lcap. We have a 3-year Lcap broken down in each 3-year increment or 1-year increment. We're also expected to update you on Lcap measurable objectives or our Lcap metrics and what's happening with our actions and services or a financial report. This is all part of the new laws that came about when the legislature provided additional monies to the local districts. You will find in your packet, or you should find in all of your packets, 3 different documents, and I'm going to just briefly go through those 3 documents for you. The first one is the supplement to the annual update of the 21-22 Lcap. This is a required document. It has to be reported by the mid-year. It has to be reported no later than February 28th of the year to the local governing board. And really, it was looking at how did we engage our educational partners in the process of the use of funds that we got from the state government as well as the federal government. And so it is broken down into various sections, which is engagement of your educational partners, description of how we use the additional state funds that were provided to us and targeted for use with supporting students. Additional, how did we use our federal funds? Think of the ESSER 3 report and what I presented previously on that. And then how did we coordinate all of those fiscal resources? And so we've had multiple reports here, whether it was the AB 86 ELO plan, whether it was the ESSER plan, the effective educator plan. We brought all those, and we've tied all those to our Lcap and our strategic goals. So in this case, this is the only one that has a specific template that had to be used, and so it does follow the state template. This plan is not to be necessarily adopted right now, but will become part of the Lcap that we will come back in June for the annual Lcap adoption. The next document that you have is the Lcap expected annual measurable objectives. Again, this is providing an overview of progress against those Lcap metrics. How are we doing? This is information as of December 15th. With many of the metrics, we don't have the ability to report outcomes at this point in time, especially if you're thinking something like the CAS test that doesn't happen until the spring. There's really not the ability to report that. So where possible, we reported metrics internally that we have. For example, how are students doing on interim assessments to give an idea. There are some that just honestly have no metric that we can report at this point in time. But overall, we're making progress on our metrics. There's definitely some and when you go through and look at it, you'll see some things related to COVID and, you know, the interruption that we've had. But I think we definitely are on the right track there. The other one is really to give you an idea of, you know, we've said this is the actions and services we're going to provide. Here's the cost associated with it. So the Lcap Action and Services does report on expenditures. Those expenditures that are in that report are as of December 31st, 2021. Those were provided by our Financial Services Division. It's based on the budget that we have, so those numbers can always change at the end a little bit. There's definitely, you know, those aren't locked in numbers, audited numbers or anything like that. But it gives you an idea of where we're hitting the mark, where we're spending against what we said we would be spending to bring about those actions and services. So as we progress from this part of the year, really where we're at right now is reviewing the current 21-22 Lcap and preparing for the 22-23 Lcap to bring it to the board for hopeful approval in June of 22. We're working with the Lcap Advisory Committee and various groups. We're pulling together data as we are able to inform us on, do we keep all those metrics? How are we doing? What changes we need to make? And then bring that back in June for public input from the public, in addition to what we've already had, as well as bringing it to the board for final approval with all of the financials attached to that. And with that, if there's anything else that you have, I can try and answer questions, but I will tell you this is a multi-division document, and my ability to answer them all is somewhat limited based on I may or may not have the answer for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Herbst. We're going to go out to the public. I don't see any public, so I'll bring it back to the board. Do any comments or questions for Mr. Hurst? I have one. Trustee Irwin, and I have a question or a suggestion. But we'll start with Trustee Irwin.
Yes. I wanted to my comment is about the mid-year progress, because I know it said that changes won't be made until the end of the year, but I know from my Lcap training, the mid-year progress is an opportunity also to revisit and say, we've been doing this X amount of time, what kind of tweaks or things that we can make to, change course, or what we need to do in order to better position ourselves to meet that particular goal, rather than that's what the whole process was in having in a mid-year progress, so you can change course if you needed to, before the end of the year in order to, make progress toward those goals if something needed to be changed or enhanced or something like that, rather than wait to the end, because that's traditionally how we always got the information before Lcap was at the end of the year, and then you make changes. But the Lcap came in and said, hey, you can make changes mid-year based on what you've done already during that year on that particular goal.
So Trustee Irvin, I think I'm going to try to answer that. So part of the process that I've shared with you all for board communications over the last month has been pretty extensive relative to student outcomes. All of those are then reported in that mid-year Lcap. So the summary report would have that. But part of that process is we take a look at the data in our high-performance team meeting. Staff take a look at what's working, what's not working, and identify next steps. So in many of the outcomes that you'll see in that mid-year review, that has gone through a pretty extensive process through the high-performance team. And we will continue to do that throughout the year as we go from quarters 2 to quarters 3, because what we do is we compare from quarter 2 to quarter 3, from quarter 3 to quarter 4, or trimester in many of those outcomes. So what you'll see in the Lcap is kind of a summary of all of those executive summaries that you've had the opportunity to read over the weekends. Did that, Mr. Godot, is there anything more you wanted to add to that?
I would also add that our summit process, both with our site administrators as well as our district level managers around oversight and leadership in those different areas, that's part of that mid-year and ongoing process of analyzing the data. We've got baseline, we've got targets, and then we adjust. We see how it's going, and then we fine tune it as we go through the year. So it's a fluid process through the year. It's not a static document with just an end.
Okay, so then what happens when we see something that is part of that goal, and we see, man, we're not progressing toward this goal like we need to be, and rather than wait till end of the school year to say okay, we're going to change this for next year, but we have an opportunity to make some tweaks and changes now. How do we what's the process for that? If we see something that sticks out, like maybe an outlier, it's like, man, we are not meeting this goal.
So there are a number of different ways, Trustee Irvin, that happens. Not all are formalized processes, but I would say an example of that would be our alternative program strategic planning group. Analyzes the data. Much of the data that we looked at would be contained in graduation, dropout rates, etc. Identifying strategies that are working, identifying things that we want to put in place because there are needs that maybe weren't addressed or weren't evaluated at that level 3-6 months ago. And when those new programs or initiatives or supports are identified, we put them into the system, and then we align them with the goals that we have. So that's an example of that.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that we're utilizing the Lcap's process, as outlined in the for the Lcap, because that was like one of the main reasons they went to this process, so we could make changes mid-year versus waiting to the end of the year. So I just thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, Trustee Irvin. Did you have a question? Okay, Trustee Marks?
So yeah, great reading, interesting, some challenges, I know, but some, I just wanted to highlight a few little ones that I noticed that we're ahead of schedule on some of them. So I will start with the, on the last goal, whatever it is, I don't recall, but it's goal 5 or 6.
Goal 5.
Goal 5, annual, okay, on goal 5. Just at the university and college partnerships that we were hoping to get 75, and we have 83 already in the midterm, so that's really cool. And recruitment, that expanding the participation in recruitment events and job fairs, that we've already had, I guess, 21. The mid-year report was 21, and the goal was 15. So already making some progress there, and we heard about the teacher recruitment fair just happened this last Saturday, so that was really great. And then, let's see, another one. I'd like to see more happen with the STEM and STEAM, but I understand where that is, so I'm going backwards now. Hold on. Just because the way my binder was working. So on the one that's goal, let me look at it. Wait a second. These don't have page numbers, so it's just hard to say what page it's on.
It should have a page number on the bottom of it.
Oh, they do. Okay, page 8 and 9. Page 8 has the dropout rate, which was really, I'm not sure what the percentage is because it doesn't say, but the high school was a decrease of 299 students from the previous year, so that's very encouraging. That's almost 300 students that we have that stayed in school this year that weren't in last year. So that's very encouraging. Hopefully being back in person is one of the reasons they're super happy to be there. And then the K-6 enrichment, I mean, my goodness, the number of students participating in K-6 summer enrichment will increase by 10%. So we had a goal of 290, and we had 619 students attended. That's just exciting that they're taking advantage of that. And then lastly, the music was a hopefulness of 1,400 students or more that would participate, and 1,574 participated. So that's really great. But those are just some things that made me say, yay, we're on target for some of these. And yeah, some of our academics, we have a lot of challenges, but hopefully the participation rate as it increases, those challenges will become less and less, and the students will be more excited to learn and move forward in their academics. So I thank you for this. It was really, really has a lot of great little points in there. So thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? My question was answered, so if there is no more comments, we'll move us forward. Thank you, Mr. Hurst. This was report only. And now we will be moving on to B7, report on Governor's 2022-2023 budget proposal. Mr. Surley, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Lopez, trustees. What I have for you tonight is a summarized school services presentation. As an attendee to school services, they provide the presentation for district use, and that's why it's not on our normal PowerPoint template that you would typically see. We'll just wait a second. The school services presentation was 3 hours long. Some of you sat through that with us and contained 131 slides. And this particular presentation obviously has been condensed to some bulleted point areas that I think are important for trustees to see. There we go. Thank you. So just remember 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, we were being cautioned at this point in time to possibly prepare for a 10% budget reduction. 2 years later, overall, the themes from the governor's budget proposal are very encouraging. We're very excited. about what the governor has proposed for the education budget. But we're currently concerned with the last bullet on this slide about inflation and the pressure of rising costs that inflation is bringing to our operating budget. And we'll talk more about that as well. Yes, Proposition 98 reaches an all-time high in the governor's budget proposal, but there are strings. For the first time, most school districts, including ourselves, will be required to either spend down our reserves or change our reserves, and we'll talk more about that as well. And a sizable share of the new funding from Governor Newsom is proposed for restricted purposes. And so that leaves fewer resources available to address those increased costs associated with rising inflation and also retirement changes as well. The governor did listen. We're very happy with the governor's administration listening about the decline in student enrollment, and we'll talk about the ADA cliff and its impact on not only our fiscal health, but the fiscal health of other school districts. And there is a proposal from the governor that we'll highlight in this presentation. However, 40% of the new Proposition 98 revenue, so as good as the California economy has done, 40% of new revenues are proposed as one-time investments instead of ongoing commitments. And that seems to be a trend of the Newsom administration. And we'll talk about what that means to us as well. The May revision will reconcile the differences you see in these bars between the Legislative Analyst's Office and the Governor's Department of Finance. Governor Newsom, his Department of Finance typically takes a conservative approach with revenues versus the Legislative Analyst's Office, and you can see the comparison. The LAO office estimates is the blue bar, and what the governor has based his proposed budget on is the yellow bar. So over the next few months, the governor and the legislature will reconcile these differences, and we'll probably see a little different governor's proposal in the May revision. So we're very happy about the 5.33% COLA that is included in the budget, and is there to help us address, as this slide points out, significant cost increases that are due to inflationary demands and also pension increases as well. We're also welcoming, and it's the first time I've seen it in my career. I don't think I've seen it. One-time infrastructure investments in facilities and transportation out of the general fund budget. And so that is new for this year, and it goes to show you how well the state's economy is doing, and that they're putting dollars in places that they haven't put them before. And then extending the expanded learning opportunities program and lowering universal transitional kindergartner ratios. Those were themes and priorities of the governor's proposal. Overview of the local control funding formula reflects the 5.33% COLA to base rates, in addition to a proposed change in calculating the average daily attendance for revenue generating purposes. And we'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. Here you see the funding factors involved in the local control funding formula calculation. We have, you see, grade span adjustments that are added to the base grant. Those factor in the 5.33% COLA, unduplicated pupil percentage, and which drives our supplemental and concentration grant funding. And you'll see details on that, beginning with this slide. So all school districts in the state of California receive the same base grant funding per average daily attendance, and that is highlighted in yellow. So no matter what school district you're in, for those grade level of students, you receive the same base grant funding. Individual school districts receive different amounts for supplemental concentration grant funding for the types of students you serve. And then you can see there on the last two lines, those are additions to the base grant funding for either supplemental students or concentration grant students for the district. SB 751 is a reserve cap on school district reserves, and it will go into effect for the first time in the 22-23 school year, and it restricts our unassigned, and that's important to note, we'll talk about that, our unassigned ending balance to 10% of our outgo. And it does exempt some small districts or basic aid districts, but for the first time next year, we will be subject to the reserve cap limitation for SB 751. Options to consider as we go through the remainder of this year to comply with SB 751 would be to commit resources rather than assign. That way we're not having unassigned balances. We can move resources to other funds, to other special funds. We contribute more dollars to our restricted programs, routine restricted maintenance. So these are all things we can consider in order to comply with SB 751. This is the first time we're having to do it, so we'll bring that to the board later on in the year. We are still subject, will always be subject to multi-year projections. Projection variables change. They change constantly. They will again change at the May revision, and then again at the adoption of the state budget. Currently, our variables are shown here. In 21-22, we received a compounded COLA of 5.07%. Now, that was for the 2021 and 21-22 years, in addition to an augmented COLA of 1%. We'll, in an upcoming slide, we'll talk about an augmented COLA. And again, we're grateful that the projected COLA right now is 5.33% for 22-23, but again, there's pressure from projected CalSTRS and Calpers cost increases as well that you see on this slide. CalSTRS is going from current year 16.92% to projection to 19.1%, and Calpers is current year is 22.91%, and it's going to 26.1% projection for the next school year. So when you start talking about a 5 or higher percent COLA, that's great to see, but as you can see, there are also some built-in cost increases that are going to come out of that. We've talked about the ADA cliff before. It's well publicized, and as I mentioned earlier, the governor and the legislature are listening, hearing us. For declining enrollment school districts, we are fortunate that we're still being funded at the 2019-2020 pre-pandemic levels of average daily attendance. So that's why the very first bar on this slide is fully blue. That's what we're currently funded out. Without legislative intervention, we will be funded in next year in 22-23 at the greater of 21-22 or 22-23 average daily attendance. That's current law is we will receive the greater of current year or prior year. So we're looking at possibly without legislative interaction, 2 years of declining enrollment from 19-20 to 21-22 that we would have to realize in 22-23 if there's not some action to help with this ADA cliff. Thankfully, the governor has a proposal, and there are other proposals we'll talk about, but funding would be the greater of current year, prior year, or a computed average daily attendance using the prior 3 years average daily attendance. So this shows you what that hypothetical scenario would be for us. We are 2 districts, so the elementary district is on the left, the high school district is on the right. The elementary district would be a financial winner from the governor's ADA proposal, while the high school district would not be impacted due to increasing average daily attendance for our high school students. Under the current law, we would be funded at either the greater of 21-22 or 22-23, which that's on the left side. So next year we're looking at funding of $13,392 under the old formula. We're currently funded at $13,999. If the governor's proposal is enacted, we would then see the 3-year average of $13,797. That's an increase of 400 students to our revenue calculation. If you go back to the previous slide, a couple slides ago, where it talked about our base rates, we're about 10,000 is an average. So you can look at, $10,000 times 400 students and see what a financial gain that would be for us if the governor's proposal is enacted. The goal here is to not necessarily eliminate the cliff. The cliff is still there. We're not asking to be funded for more students than we serve. However, it makes the landing a little softer this way by averaging it out over 3 years than the 1-year ADA cliff. A large investment also in Proposition 98 is the extension or the expansion of the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, an additional $3.4 billion of ongoing dollars for the ELO program. And you can just see their highlights of what the ELO program can be. We're following this proposal very closely. Obviously, we have some interest in it, as we would benefit from our decision to purchase electric vehicle buses. And again, as I mentioned, for the first time, the governor's proposing dollars out of the operation budget for transportation. Right now, the governor's proposing grants of at least $500,000 for the acquisition of electric school buses, construction of charging stations, and to support local school bus transportation needs. So, and also we're very pleased with the last bullet that the governor's proposing a work group that will streamline the process of training and licensing new school bus drivers. Many times it takes a long time for a bus driver to be certified, to become licensed. They find jobs, paying jobs, other places, instead of going through that several-month process to become a school bus driver. So we're very excited to see how the governor can streamline that. Special education, again, we're very fortunate and happy to see additional funding and ongoing funding commitments for special education. From Proposition 98 and the 5.33% COLA adjustment, bringing average base rates throughout the state to about $820 per ADA for students with disabilities. We're very excited that the governor has invested in special education funding, or at least is proposing to increase the investment. Currently, universal transitional kindergarten is offered to 4-year-olds that turn 5 between September 2nd and December 2nd. Under this plan, by 2025-26, universal transitional kindergarten will be expanded to offer it to all students who turn 4 by September 1. So just by 2025-26. So just keep in mind, if they turn 4 by September 1, we start in August. Potential that some are still 3 in the middle of August when they start school, when this is fully implemented in 25-26. Transitional kindergarten classroom ratios are being lowered to 12-1. Language states 12 students per adult, without mentioning 12 students per credentialed teacher. That's a little ambiguous in the language, but it clearly states 12 students per adult and not 12 students per teacher. And then if funding continues or is added in 23-24, that will continue to be reduced to 10 students per adult in 23-24, excuse me, if there's additional funding provided that year. This just shows the certification requirements for transitional kindergarten teachers in order to be eligible to teach in the program. SB 328, Mr. Goodall talked about it earlier, is the later start time initiative for junior high and high schools. And it goes into effect on July 1st of this year, July 1st of 22. And as you can see, for junior highs, no earlier than 8 a.m. they can begin. Currently, our junior highs start around 9 a.m., so that's not going to be a change due to this legislation. But our high schools cannot start any earlier than 8:30. Currently, they start around 7:55 or 8 o'clock. So that's going to be a change to their bell times for next year. It cannot start earlier than 8:30. And then we'll be discussing the impact of this legislation on all of our schools, including elementary and junior high schools, at a board workshop on February 28th. What's not in the proposed budget? As I mentioned, additional pension relief. The state has contributed the last few years to help us, as the employer, subsidize the rate. That has run out. And both pension plans are increasing by more than 2% for this year. Currently, there's a 5.33% COLA, as I mentioned. There's no augmented COLA. So last year, the COLA is based on a statutory calculation. If the state's economy is doing better than expected, the governor can augment that with legislative approval. That is not included in the governor's proposal. And then unduplicated pupil solutions. Universal meals means every student gets free lunch. And we used to track our students by the meal application form. That is no longer a requirement, as all students receive the free meal. However, we're not as severely impacted as other districts because we have done a great job through school leadership and Steve Hurst's area, where we have a tracking form. We call it the LCFF tracking form, and we make that a priority to get those forms turned in order so our unduplicated pupil percentage remains at the level that it is currently. But that is a concern. You may hear that from other districts throughout the state now that they're going to universal meals. Calpers employer contribution rates, again, you can see there's a 3.19% increase from the current year to the proposed 26.1% in 22-23. And you can see that that does continue with slight increases through the year 26-27. Similar to CalPERS, CalSTRS has increases, an increase of 2.18% from the current year. And then you can see, just looking back, going back to July 1 of 2013, it was 8.25% beginning in July 1 of 22. That is projected to be 19.1%. So those are dollars that come out of the increased funding that we receive through the local control funding formula. These are some outstanding proposed legislation that we're watching very closely. AB 1607 and 1609 are further ADA-related legislation to help with the cliff, in addition to what the governor has proposed. AB 1614 is very popular throughout the state, as that would increase the base rates for student funding. And again, base rates are the same for all school districts, depending on the grade level of the student that they serve. But anytime the base rate goes up, that also increases the supplemental percentage and the concentration grant percentage. So as a district with supplemental and concentration grant students, we would benefit from base rate increases. We're very supportive of that. And SB 830 would transition, this is a new thought, but it would transition our current attendance funded local control funding formula calculation to an enrollment funded local control funding formula calculations. So there's still some details to figure out on that, but that's an interesting concept because currently we're funded for everyday students are in the seat. This would calculate an average enrollment number for us to be funded by, not necessarily if students are in the seat or not. Next state budget checkpoint is the May revision. Like last year, if you recall, Governor Newsom was seeking early budget action to address the needs of the pandemic. He's doing that again this year. He's calling for immediate action. Right now there's a sick leave bill that they're discussing, and so we expect to see that again for the foreseeable future. We do expect COVID-19 to preoccupy much of our collective work. And we're very fortunate that here in Modesto City Schools, that our educational leaders, as you've heard tonight, I know a trustee gave it in his report, they have and they will continue to rise to the occasion, whatever occasion that is, needed to address the needs of students, families, and our communities. And then this is the typical budget reporting cycle. The governor's proposed budget is just the starting point for our 22-23 budget development that culminates in June with both the Lcap and budget adoptions. The next state checkpoint for revenues is the release of the May revision. And any changes from this presentation will be provided in the June budget hearing. With that, I'll answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Surley. We have no questions or comments from the public. I saw Trustee Irwin's light and then Vice President Brown's. So I'll start with Trustee Irwin.
Yeah, in depth report.
And quick.
Yeah, and quick. It's just, yeah. I just wanted to ask, what do you think the change in providing more funding for special education was due to? I mean, before we've dipped into general funds and, try to, shore up some of the lack of funding. What do you think was it advocacy or the right thing to do? What led to that?
We do know that this has been something the governor ran on. The governor is very close to. I believe he has a child, a special needs child. To what level, I'm not sure. But this is something that's been a priority of the governor since he was elected. And so I just think it's his efforts, constant efforts to bring light to the fact, and you hear us talk about all the time, we're underfunded for special needs students, and it's nice to see that the governor recognizes that, and dollars are going towards that.
Oh, yeah, that's really, really good. Nice chess move.
Vice President Brown.
So with regard to special education, this is a start. It's not nearly achieving that unfunded mandate from the federal government. So we need to continue to lobby for additional support and make sure that we're not borrowing from educational opportunities of the general public to meet that federal mandate. So the state needs to step up even further, so we have to keep working. So I have a question. With the expansion of TK and the fact that the age is dropping, how is that going to affect us with programs such as Head Start? Are we going to see reduced funding for Head Start because we're serving the needs of those students in our TK programs?
Yes, that is an outcome. Obviously, we can't double dip on the funding of students. So if a student is in our TK program, is TK eligible, then that student is funded through the local control funding formula, which without another backfill into the early childhood education program, then yes, that would happen. But I know there's going to be a need for early childhood education. I don't know if there's something I'm missing on the program side of it, but that is an outcome.
Yeah, no, I can, that is one of the that's the only department I actually supervise because it's so intricate and there's just a lot to learn, so I didn't want cabinet members to have to try to learn those programs. But yes, currently we do have a task force working that has multiple people from facilities. This is a huge impact for facilities. Also ramifications for our early childhood education, Head Start, and our state preschool. At the end of the day, you're going to get more money in LCFF than you're going to get from Head Start. The question is, what is that going to do to impact the programs that we have? We are looking at, and I don't want to take our time tonight, but we are looking at investment and increasing infant toddler programs so we can add more kids into our programs as we lose kids, not lose them, but as they transition to LCFF and that program. So we currently are working on that, and we'll have I think it's slotted to come back in either the end of April or beginning of May as far as the 3-year plan on the multifaceted implications for that.
Trustee Maestas?
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. I think SB 70 that got sent to the Assembly on requiring kindergarten to enter first grade. And that's coming through the state as well, to keep an eye on. So right now, kindergarten is not required, correct? Like, it's not a requirement for first grade, but if it becomes a requirement, then that adds to the complexity of providing space for students as well as the TK. So that's something we should also keep an eye on.
Thank you. That's a great point, and that wasn't referenced in the slide, but definitely that's one we're watching as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a brief comment.
Trustee Marks?
Just a brief comment about the, just as we look at this, you know, it's been great. You made a comment about the governor giving one-time funds. He's really been great about the one-time funds, but we have to just keep in mind the STRS, PERS, our step and column, and inflation. They're all, you know, playing a part in this as we build our budget for this next year. That it's nice to see this amount of money that we have when we look at our own budget, but then also where are we headed in the future? And then that cliff that may not be as bad as we're hoping. That would be really good, that ADA cliff that's coming in the next year. But I'm glad they're looking at least some bills to delay that, or at least soften the blow that may happen. So just that's something, as I'm looking at the budget, how do we do that? But I loved how, you know, in some of it, they had the early literacy. They have some grants for people to take advantage of for coaches, and expand multilingual schools, which I'm always appreciative of seeing an opportunity to be able to do that, and maybe support our dual language schools, but just to see if we can take advantage of that and the CTE money. And I know we're already taking advantage of the transportation, so those are all good things with this budget. So lots of good in this budget. It was nice to have a good budget after we've heard all these, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So it's been really nice.
Thank you. Trustee Irwin?
I just wanted to make a comment about the Head Start. We got to keep Head Start. Man, I was a Head Start student in LA Unified School District, you know. Yeah, about 20 years ago. No. But just a plug for Head Start. Good deal.
Definitely. So if there isn't any more comments or questions, this was a report only. We thank you, Mr. Sterling, and we'll be moving to B8, which is also will be presented by Mr. Sterling. It's the approval of acceptance of the district's 2020-2021 financial statement and auditor's report of all funds, including bond measures D and E.
Thank you again, President Lopez, trustees, and I'm so fortunate to have Bill Williams, our partner with our auditing firm, Eide Bailey, here to go through the audit report. It is a 105-page audit report, and Bill has condensed it down to a few slides. And I do want to say that the slide presentation that you see, we added today to the agenda, made it available today. Instead of Bill being virtual, having to read through the audit report, we thought it would be much easier to follow along with a PowerPoint slide presentation. So that did get added today. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge the work of Michelle Price, Senior Director Michelle Price and her team, led by Kim Campstra and Matthew Castanon. It's been mentioned, I think, once or twice tonight that our audit report had no significant findings in it. We have about $500 million of expenditures that go through our budget or our funds over the course of the year. And it just is a testament to the daily work. And I know a lot of times people don't like to hear from financial services because it's, you can't do this, you can't do that. But there's a reason we have certain measures in place. And it's reflective in this audit report. And I just want to acknowledge the work that they do on a daily basis for us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Williams, who's here virtually with us.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Good. Perfect. Okay. Well, yeah, we did definitely feel this for you to shorten it up. We know your board meetings go long and you've got a lot of other things on your plate besides the audit, but it is very important to you. Just to kind of let you know, you've heard this before, unless you're a new board member. We had kind of two exit meetings when the audit draft was being reviewed. One was with the fiscal department, And again, like Tim said, we really need to thank them because it's been, as much of a struggle it is for you guys to teach your students, it's been a struggle for us to get these audits done. Obviously, our clients are just all over the place. We've got CBOs in classrooms, and the last thing on their mind right now is providing us what we need to get it done. So we really want to thank you for being one of the, about third of our clients that we were able to issue by January 31st. The rest of them are on extension. So that really says a lot to the district. The big districts were much easier to get the work done. There's just more staffing available. It's the small ones that we're really, really struggling with. But like I said, we had 2 exits, one with the fiscal staff, and then right after that we had another exit with a few people from the fiscal staff. Tim was there, Michelle, a few board members, union reps, and that's kind of been the norm so that the board presentation goes pretty quickly for the rest of you so you can get on with your daily lives here, your board meeting. So the next slide, just to kind of explain, we usually come out to the district twice a year. We come out before you close your books to look at processes, check state compliance, get started on a lot of your long-term debt, get things updated for that. And then once your books are closed, which is basically your unaudited actuals prepared and done, then we come in to do the financial audit side of our processes and then draft your audit report and provide the draft back to the fiscal staff for review. So as Tim mentioned, there were no findings, which is outstanding. There's 3 opinions in your audit report. There's 4. There's one in the front, which basically says everything was fine and your financial statements are materially correct. There's an internal control finding in the back on general internal controls. There were no issues with that opinion. And then there's also an opinion on federal compliance and state compliance, which you definitely don't want findings in there because that usually means you've got a fiscal impact tagged onto that thing. So probably the cliff notes is what I like to refer to them is your management's discussion and analysis. It's right after the first opinion letter. It's on pages 4 through 13 in your audit report. You'll spot it very easily. It's the only section that begins on the district's letterhead. So if you remember that and you see your district's letterhead, you know you're in your MD&A, you're in your audit report cliff notes. It's a great place for board members to go just to get kind of a snapshot, current year, prior year comparisons, some discussions on debt, fixed assets, things like that. Your financial statements follow that. Next slide, Tim. Looks like I jumped ahead. Nope, yeah, good. So your statement of net position and statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position are entity-wide statements. So I kind of try to say this at every board meeting. When you're seeing the word net position, you were talking about entity-wide. That's the summation of all of the district's operating funds together, and that also includes the district's long-term debt and the district's fixed assets that are being depreciated. This year for 2021, there was a restatement of $3.2 million in the beginning net position because, I mentioned this last year, GASB 84 changed the definition of basically your student body accounts. They were reported by themselves in fiduciary funds last year, but for this current year, you have created a fund 08, which is the Student Activities Governmental Fund. So now it's going to be right next to your general fund, cafeteria, child development, all of that. So that also brought in the annual revenues and expenditures of all of your ASBs. So that was quite a bit of work for your staff to deal with this year as well in going out, making sure they had all of the accounts from all of the sites, all of the CDs, all of the savings accounts, and then grabbing all of the revenues and expenses for all of the student bodies. That includes the elementary, junior highs, and the high school. So that was a pretty big implementation this year. Your fund financial statements are right behind those. You'll see those. You'll see fund names that look very familiar. You'll see the term fund balance, so you know you're back into your funds. Right behind those fund financial statements is a long section referred to as the notes to the financial statements. That section gives you details about where is the district's cash and investments, as most of it's in the county treasury. What are your accounts receivable balances? Who owes you money? Basically, federal, state government. Your payables, who are your payables due to? Is it payroll related or is it vendor related? And then there's additional schedules in the back of your report that are, some of them are required for OPEB and for the net pension liability figures, but beyond that, there's ADA information when you had ADA, which is coming back next year, instructional minute schedules, your schedule of federal awards, which grew substantially this year across the state, obviously because of the COVID dollars coming in. Next slide, Tim. Good, perfect. Okay, so your net position total, again, net positions, all funds combined, Netting of fixed assets and debt was $7.7 million. The unrestricted net position was a deficit, $354 million. I will explain why. Your bonded debt impacts that. That's $190 million. Your net OPEB liability, which is your retirement obligation, actuarially determined, is $161 million. The big one is the net pension liability, $437 million. So that is a liability. That right there is what's causing that deficit, unrestricted up top. There's nothing you can do about that. That is the district's proportionate share of your STRS and PERS unfunded pension liability at the state level. I'm not sure if there's new board members, but I try to explain this every year. It's a massive number, and they take your contributions into STRS compared to everyone else's, and your contributions into PERS compared to everyone else's, and that percentage is the chunk of the total liability that's reported on your financial statements. Next slide, Tim. Your general fund increased about $28 million to $136 million. About $38.5 million of CARES dollars are spent. That's federal. CRF, ESSER, GEAR, that's on your CFA. The available reserves ended about 16%. They've been 16% the last several years, right on the button there. Tim already talked about your cap at 10%, which don't really agree with that. But anyway, right now your minimum is 3%, and obviously we do not like seeing anybody near that as auditors, and you haven't been, which is great. The CRF, ESSER, and GEAR impact on our work as well really increased things. They were all brand new programs. They were deemed to be higher risk, so our testing skyrocketed on those. So that's another thing that kind of contributed to the difficulties in getting these audits done this year. With all those new dollars coming in and all the new audit requirements coming in, it was just something to tackle. But you guys were really organized, thankfully, had the documentation ready for us, met with us, consulted with us kind of throughout the year on the use of these funds, on distance learning, which was great. We love our clients to be kind of ahead. Let's just do it right the first time and not find out you did it wrong later during the audit. I don't like writing findings. It takes me more time. And plus, I kind of like my client. So usually when it's a finding, it's not a good thing. But sometimes we have to write them. So again, there were none this year, so the district did a very good job. And again, Tim said it, and I can't say it enough, we really have to thank the fiscal staff. It's a lot of information that we need, especially with all of these new federal grants that we had to test. Our sample sizes went from 40 to 60 for every federal program we had to test because of this. And that came out late in the game. We did not know that they were going to say they are higher risk. And our audit guy came out really late. I mean, all these grants were really new. So everybody was kind of behind the power curve on these. The feds, the state, the auditors knowing what to test and what to do. So again, we just thank you for getting one of these off my desk on time. I appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shirley, anything you wanted to add to?
No, now is the time. Again, there's a lot to unpack in 108 pages, but Bill highlighted the important points for a board member, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Seeing there's no public comments or questions, we'll move to the board. Is there any comments? Oh, we have two. We'll start with Trustee Irvin.
I would just had to, when I was going through the balance sheet, just for clarification, the liability section on the fund balance, on the balance sheet, what's the overdrafts for on that? And then on the fund balances, there's non-spendable, and what's that? Because it looks like something's being spent, but it says non-spendable.
Yeah, it's just I can take the non-spendable. The non-spendable is basically your inventory or any prepaid you have. It shows up being not, because it's in your fund balance, but it's an inventory item that you can't spend on an expense. It's something that's just sitting there. The overdraft is usually a negative cash balance. I'm looking for that right now. Do you remember what page you saw that on?
16.
Let's see.
16?
19.
Oh, it's 19, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on 16 too, so that's okay. That's going to be a fund. Tim, do you remember a fund ending with negative cash in county?
No.
But it's going to take me a minute here. It might have been, which fund? The County School Facilities Fund. So what likely happened is that that fund is due money, which, yeah, they are. So they've spent funds, they've probably borrowed from another fund now for the state-funded projects, and there's a large receivable there to offset that. So that overdraft deficit cash and county is 1.5 million, but the receivable is 1.7 million. So basically, you're just waiting for the money to come in from the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Brown? Vice President, Trustee Brown.
So, Mr. Williams, we appreciate this report, and I just wanted to go back. I've looked at these audit reports for over 20 years now, and never seen one without a finding. So how unusual is this?
You know, these days it's really not, especially, usually the findings are student body related, right? So once your school's pretty much shut down, a lot of the findings went away. So there's your kicker. And really we don't, you know, we've had, your district had a finding last year because there was a material, we had to fix something basically, that was a material misstatement. So that is going to trigger a finding because there was an internal control that caused a material weakness. We have probably had twice as many of those, especially in 1920, as we had before, ever, because of the remote work environment and the distractions going on at the districts. That's the only explanation for it, because you've never had a finding like that. We've had 3 other very good clients that have never had misstatements, and they all had one last year too. So the only difference is the impact of COVID, the impact of working remote, your staff being in and out of the office all the time, half your staff being, you know, home, half of them being in the office to try and limit contact and things like that. So with just basically the ASB pretty much being non-active saved a lot of findings. And a lot of times those findings do not end up in your audit report anyway. They're more management observations, management comments, because for a finding to end up in your audit report, there has to be a chance that it could materially misstate your audit report. And we know compared to your budget and the dollars being spent out of the other funds, the student bodies are nowhere near that. And now that they're in the governmental funds and not by themselves as a fiduciary fund, there's a very likely chance that you may never see a student body finding in your audit report again.
That's great. Now, one other question. I know in our consent agenda, we voted related to the bond measures. And can you just give us a statement so the public is aware? How did we do there?
Yeah, there were no findings there either in the bond audits, either one of the measures.
So
basically, we just make sure that the district is spending the money the way that they presented to the bond holders, the public that voted on passage of the bond, to make sure that the project list and the district spent the dollars on what they told the public they were going to spend those bond proceeds on. And there were no compliance issues with those reports either.
Well, thank you. That's always important for the public to hear, that the money they've entrusted to us is being spent the way we presented it, and we're doing what we're supposed to with the public funds. Thank you.
Yeah, you've got a very strong facilities department out there too.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Well, I want to thank Mr. Surley and Bill for this presentation. I know being in the audit meeting a couple last week or so, it was very well explained and it went very smoothly. So I appreciate the effort that everyone puts into that. We have this no findings, right? And so now I'm looking for approval of the acceptance of the district's 2020-2021 financial statement and auditor's report of all funds, including bond measures D and E. I have a motion by Trustee Mejia. Do I have your second? Seconded by Vice President Brown. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Charlene. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes unanimously. And before we close our meeting today, we have an revision to do.
Actually, I contacted General Counsel and we're good.
Okay, great, awesome. So, is there any items to be placed on future board agendas? Nope. Can I get a motion to adjourn for tonight? I move adjournment. Motion by trustee Marks, seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Have a good night, everyone.